Welcome to Mental Health Breakthroughs for Young Adults and Families. I'm your host, Carey Conley. This podcast is dedicated to helping young adults navigate through the challenges and learning curves that they're experiencing in every area of life. My personal episodes will be dedicated to helping you with getting clarity, direction, moving through adversity, and living with purpose and hope. I will also be bringing you amazing guests to discuss topics such as finances, career choices, relationships, grief, addiction, positive mindset, mental health, and more. I am on a mission to help you live a life that you love and have the confidence to go after your dreams. Hi, everyone. This is Carey Conley, your host of Mental Health Breakthroughs for Young Adults and Families. And I am so excited and honored to bring on a new friend of mine who I got connected to from a mutual friend in Colorado. His name is Jason Hopcus. Jason, thank you so much for being here.
Carey, it's a pleasure. I'm so grateful to be here today.
Yeah. So I want to just read a short bio about you. And then I'm hoping that you'll kind of share your story as to how you came to do what you are doing in the mental health space. So Jason is a catalyst for positive change in mental health, both through his for-profit business called Connection Project, and as CEO and president of the National Alliance of Mental Illness for Arapahoe and Douglas counties in Colorado. He spotlights people who have triumphed over personal struggles and leads efforts to provide support and resources to those in need. And I think that's why we got connected, is because you and I both, especially in this wrapping up the month of May of mental health awareness, I'm just thrilled that you could take the time to be here today, Jason. So tell me a little bit about your story.
Well, it's a pleasure, and thank you for having me again. So my story, began more than a decade ago. I did not come to mental health just through altruistic reasons. I actually learned about it from living experience. I was a real estate and construction executive and had a very successful career. And after the crash of 2008, really found myself in a place like so many others that I was wayward and didn't know exactly what came next for me. And what I've unraveled in the decade plus since is that I had invested an entire lifetime in being that version of myself that really didn't fulfill me.
Right.
And I have since learned that just because we're good at something doesn't mean we necessarily should do it. So there was the realization of that. But around 2010, I found myself in a place that my mental health was really precarious. I could not navigate the ups and downs of life, all the changes I had been through. And I will say over the course of the next couple of years, my mental health continued to deteriorate. And I went through what I will now lovingly call a breakthrough, but in fairness, it was a breakdown. And, I will say today that I lost my money, my mind, and my way. And I don't mean any of that tongue in cheek. I literally did lose all of those things. Right. And what that did for me, Carey, was really put me on a path of deeper understanding, deeper growth, deeper exploration, of recognizing there has to be more to this thing called life than just going through and doing what's expected of you and, making the money and having all the things. And it just, that life was not fulfilling or sustainable for me. Right. So, I was an educated white guy that had supportive family members, that had some resources, that was educated, that had the wherewithal, you would think, to be able to figure my way out of the trenches. And frankly, even with all of that privilege, which is indeed privilege, I was not able to do any of that. And I found myself completely bereft and lost, and really was kind of left with two choices. And it was to begin again or to end it all. And it's, I've said through a mustard seed of faith that I've continued to move into this season of my life that really is dedicated to being in service of others. And mental health is the path that I chose. And frankly, from that experience and understanding, just recognizing that when we are struggling, it should not be so hard to get connected to the support that we need that can help us. And that's really what put me on the path that's kind of framed the last decade plus of my life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that so transparently, and I think that so many people can resonate with, what you're talking about, how you lost everything and, had a breakdown and then a breakthrough, because everybody I brought onto this show, they've all told different stories of adversity, Jason, and they've all said similar things, that they had just something tragic happen that just rocked their world, and they made a choice to, pick up from it and move on and help other people. So, and I think this is such a big thing, especially young males that are dealing with mental health issues in our country. There's a lot of pressure around their identity of what they do and not who they are. Would you agree with that?
I would, and statistically, I shouldn't be here. I mean, I should not have been a
Yeah.
survivor of this, and I am eternally humbled and grateful by the fact that I survived that statistic. But middle-aged men are among the most high suicide rates
Yeah.
in the nation, and that is not declining. In fact, many vulnerable or marginalized populations we see have some of the highest suicidal ideation and completion rates. And there's not a single statistic that's trending downward that tells us what we're doing collectively has made a difference
Yeah.
yet.
Yet.
So my
Yeah.
work is really focused on those vulnerable or marginalized populations like middle-aged men. And how do we meet them where they are? How do we connect them with resources? Because I think the thing that we're seeing, Carey, is, the traditional system, for one thing, was never designed to meet the demand that's been placed on it.
Yep.
And the system itself was built to assume that people are willing to do more. They're willing to take meds. They're willing to see a therapist. They're willing to check into inpatient if they need it, or do group therapy or whatever that may be. And the reality is that's not where people begin. People don't learn about mental health until it hits their home. And I happen to have this deeply profound story of how it impacted my life, but I am not unique. And to your point, any one of us could be affected by this. And I think that the conversation falls short of the fact that we have never level set the fact that we all have mental health.
Yes.
Every single one of us has mental health, and that's across the continuum of could be poor, could be great, could be anywhere in between. And I think it's important for us to start having conversations like this around everyone's struggles.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. I've shared my story many times here that I lost my husband to suicide when he was 51, and then lost my 25-year-old son also to suicide. And a lot of it was the pressure of their identity. And so many other things factor into when people take their lives. But a big part of it was their identity wrapped around what they do. And I honestly have to tell you, then I was not seeing what was happening. Obviously, hindsight is always 20/20, right? People always ask me, did you see it coming? What were the signs? And clearly I did not see the signs, or else I would have sought out these resources you're talking about. But you are right. To this point, they really are not as readily available. And so is that why you launched your company, Connection Project? Tell me a little bit about that.
It was. So it was built on the work that I had done at NAMI, Arapahoe, and Douglas counties, really in recognizing that NAMI as an organization was developed to serve chronically and persistently mentally ill loved ones and their family members. It was formed by a group of family members sitting around a kitchen table in the late 70s that wanted to support their loved ones. And what I learned from my own experience, and while NAMI was foundational in my rebuilding, what I really learned is there's a broad swath of everyone else that we didn't serve. So we founded Connection Project, and our mission is simple: to more deeply strengthen and to build and strengthen connections to ourselves and others. I'm tongue-tied there today. And really just from that understanding, recognizing that, if somebody is struggling, the line from I am struggling to I can find support needs to be shortened.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, we had fits and starts of starting the organization, because how do you market to everybody? And really what we're doing applies to everyone. So what we sort of retooled and realized after the first couple of years was, let's serve the most vulnerable or marginalized population. So, in the almost 8 years that we've been in business, we have served the responder community with tremendous impact and effect, vets and service members, middle-aged men. We've worked with moms, especially postpartum moms. We do a tremendous amount of work with youth and families. And frankly, the combination of how we're doing this, we build these large-scale social impact campaigns targeted for these vulnerable or marginalized communities. It's working.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is having a tremendous impact. And I'm just really grateful that I get to show up and do work that I love every day that actually doesn't feel like work. I mean, don't tell anybody that, but I get paid to do what I love.
Yeah. And you're making a big difference in this movement that you and I are both on to change the trajectory of this. So give me one example of how you serve one of those communities.
That's a great question. So currently we are wholeheartedly invested in youth and family work. So we started an initiative called Nobody's Perfect Community. And if anybody wants to check it out, it's nobodiesperfect.community. That's our website. We started with a podcast of that same name back on October 10th of 2023 on World Mental Health Day. And really, our initiative is focused on how do we get people connected to resources on the shortest line possible, but more importantly, how do we have these community conversations that really inspire, connected conversation, change, understanding, education around all of the things that are kind of labeled as taboo or that we don't want to talk about. So, like I said, we launched the podcast last October. As of today, we're reaching about 5,000 people an episode. We've made over 4 million impressions in the Denver metro community through our social and media outreach efforts. What it tells me is what we are doing is wanted, it is needed. And then we launched the community itself, which is the website I mentioned earlier, at the end of March. And it is a host of resources for youth, families and caregivers, educators, and providers. So there are 3 buckets of categories. They are topic centric based on focus groups, surveys, research projects that we've done over the last 5 years with youth and family members that really validate what the things they're struggling with. And then we offer you resources across the continuum of care. So I have an entire team of clinicians that works with me that has done a fabulous job of vetting these resources. In the beginning, we identified about 250 resources to be on the page. By the time they went through our proprietary vetting process, we ended up with about 110 resources that currently live on the page. And what we really were focused on are 2 things. One, identifying resources across the continuum of care. And for more simple language, meeting people where they are, recognizing that you may be looking for self-empowerment or self-management resources or direct care or crisis resources. We meet you where you are on that continuum and provide you with resources along the way. And the other thing was really ensuring that we were offering quality resources that people could rely on and trust, that had the capacity to scale, knowing that we were going to drive a lot of traffic to this website. And I will tell you, in a very short time, we are having phenomenal success doing this. And while this is currently a Colorado initiative, we are quickly moving into how do we scale this nationally.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if it was global or if it was just local at the moment.
Currently, it is a Colorado initiative, but I will say for anybody that's listening that's in another state, by and large, the resources that we have listed are national or scalable resources. So certainly if you're listening and that appeals or applies to you, certainly look at what we are offering, because most of the resources are not regional or statewide resources. They are things that can scale, across state lines. We just had to pick a place to begin. But
sure. I'm so glad you're talking about this because as I'm launching my new community this month called Vision is Victory Academy, we definitely want to be highlighting you and your resources in there, Jason, because, obviously I'm not medical trained in any of what your clinicians are doing. And people ask me all the time, where do I go for help? So this is great that we're talking about this. So thank you.
Well, and you're welcome. And thank you for supporting us. It was really born of this understanding. Like, I've been in mental health a long time now, and I recognize that resource lists are often given as, here's a list of 50 resources, you go and figure it out. And I know in my own time of struggle, like if somebody had given me a list of 50 resources, the likelihood of me taking action on any one of them would have been pretty slim.
Right.
So from that understanding, that's why we were so focused on being topic centric. If you're struggling with disordered eating, or you're struggling with anxiety or depression, or self-harm or bullying or any of those sort of things, you can connect with resources through a topic, whether you enter into the search bar or you click on one of the tabs in our website. We've made it super easy to navigate. You can get connected with resources that you choose. Because I go back to what I said earlier about the traditional system. The system assumes that people are willing to do more. And what I've learned is, once you recognize that you're struggling, you start seeking help is not the day you decide to book a therapy appointment, usually, or go to your doctor and ask for meds. And Carey, it's not my place to decide what's going to help you with your struggle or your mental health. If you think a compelling podcast episode is valuable for you, great. If watching a video on YouTube is good for you, great.
Right.
Like, do those things, because I think the thing that we do know is what we show up and do with commitment and consistency is what really adds up and matters.
Yeah.
But you choose where you want to begin. Like, it's not my job to choose for you.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're saying that.
Some resources.
Right. And, it's been almost 10 years now since losing my husband and 7 of my son. And I can already just tell by all the things you're talking about how far we've already come with the help of people like you, right? Of just making this so much easier. Because you're right. If my husband had been handed a list of things, chances are, no, he wouldn't have done it. So So
And
thank
that's
you.
the problem you have to realize, as a able-bodied, well-bodied person, when you're not in the trenches of struggle, you don't recognize what it can be like when you're in a place where there is no light.
Right.
I know firsthand what it's like to walk through life and see zero light. I mean, it is literally only by sheer faith that I am still here.
Yeah.
I not to be graphic, but there was a single year that I walked every day contemplating how was I going to die.
Yeah.
And, I just I don't think that's normal. I don't think it's, I'm not criticizing anybody who feels that way or has felt that way, because I think that we need to normalize the fact that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, we are a society of 7 billion plus people. Like, you are not alone. And it is amazing how the psyche can put us in a place that makes us think that we are alone and we're the only person that's been through this. And, my hope is, can we just shine a light to help people recognize they're not alone,
Yeah.
and shorten the path of I am struggling to I found help.
Yeah.
If
And
I
I
can do
think
that, great.
yes, and I think that's the big key, right? Is to have communities like you've built and like I'm building with Viva, is because people, when they isolate, feel like they are the only ones feeling this way or thinking this way,
Right.
and the more we talk about it, the more it takes the heaviness off, right? So I appreciate what you're building and all the resources, and I know it's a lot of work. But I want to spend the last few minutes talking a little bit about NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, that you are working with there in Colorado, and how you're working with the kids. How are we going to start talking to them about positive mental health?
Yeah. So, the work that we're doing through Nobody's Perfect Community is an extension of NAMI. NAMI got grant resources. NAMI, Arapahoe Douglas County, got grant resources to build that, and
Gotcha.
partnered with my organization Connection Project to build it. So if you look on the page, it's going to say powered by NAMI Arapahoe Douglas counties. We've received funding from our state organization, NAMI Colorado, as well, to help make this a possibility. But, the reality is to do this work takes a village. While I may be the brainchild that has come up with this, I have a team of really smart people behind me that really help drive this into the passion project that it's become. And, I think it's nothing short of a miracle that we are here. Fortunately, by the good graces of some good work that I've done along the way has made me capable of doing this. But, the fact of the matter is it takes a village.
Right.
Like, I can't stress that enough. And, just being able to spread the message over and over again. And NAMI has been a phenomenal platform for us to be able to do that through. And it gives us some gravitas in the work that we do to be aligned with the National Mental Health Organization. But, again, here we are in 2024. And to your point, while we've made strides, there is still plenty of work to be done.
Yes. Yes. Especially working with the kids.
Absolutely.
Because
and what I love about working with kids, not to interrupt you there, but is there is an effort and an element about focusing on prevention.
yes.
The system was built to serve kind of in a very reactionary way, to serve adults that were in crisis or having challenges. My hope is, with the work that we're doing, we can serve youth earlier along the way. And what we have learned overwhelmingly, Carey, is youth will talk about mental health in a way that most adults never will. And
Sure.
that, for me, is very inspiring and hopeful around how do we change the conversation and hopefully the trajectory to build healthier adults. Like, isn't that the goal?
It is the goal, because as I'm going to start working with young adults, the early 20, early 30 group, already they are a lot of negative narrative happening. And if we can start working with like my grandson's going to turn 4 in a couple weeks, and I am so aware of his mental state and his emotional state, and of course his mom is too as well. If we can start with embedding positive messages that are rooted there, they are going to get through so much of life's adversity so much healthier, don't you think?
I agree. And you make a perfect point. And that's why I talked about earlier the 3 audiences that we're serving with Nobody's Perfect Community. You don't get youth that are struggling generally without parents who have some challenges or
Sure.
issues also. And what we have learned by and large, and I've been in rooms with hundreds of youth at this point and interviewed so many of them, youth want to be able to talk to their parents. And I think there's this interesting dynamic of most youth today are natives to technology. parents are adaptives to technology at this point. And I think there is a disconnect that comes between the native versus the adaptive roles here. And I find that often what happens is parents don't know how to talk to their kids about something. They do one of two things. They either ignore it and avoid it, or they go all in on it and they have a conversation that isn't the way that they wanted. And so hopefully, our podcast has been a conduit for educating parents around some of these really critical things that their youth are struggling with, but really hopefully is an inspiration point for youth to start talking today. We did a survey last summer that was really compelling. We asked youth in our survey, and this was a pretty widely disseminated survey, to rate their mental health. And I will tell you that over 72% rated their mental health as fair or poor.
Mm-hmm.
You
told me this.
But you asked the same question of parents about their youth, and the statistic was more like 30% thought their youth's mental health was fair or poor. That tells me right there is a disconnect in conversation.
Right.
Parents are not seeing something, and I'm not vilifying parents at all, but there are things that, older generations may have a different wherewithal to move through life than our young people do today. And I think there's a bridge that we have to form here that really looks like, how do we educate people about the concept of struggle and then support them in a more healthy way along the way?
Right. What's the age group that you did this study on?
That survey was 14 to 18-year-olds.
Okay.
And then we did an adult survey for the serious mental illness population. But I will tell you, Carey, what we could have started at was as early as 10.
Yes.
We chose 14 because that's where youth can get involved with their school planning. Like if they have an IEP or a 504 plan, they can be a voice in those conversations. That's where we began it. But we're actually working on expanding our resources right now. We've just written another grant to see if we can include preteens and identify resources for them, because, heartbreakingly, the struggle is starting earlier and earlier.
Yes.
And
that's why I wanted to ask you that, because I don't think many parents realize how young it starts. A couple of years ago, I was doing some research on what the statistics were now, the suicide rates, and I found statistics starting at age 5, and it just broke my heart. And I don't think, we're just, like you said, we want to deny all this, right? Which, not my kid,
Right.
But we have to be real about this. And yes, we have to learn how can we communicate to them in the way that they will receive it, because there is a bridge there that needs to be gapped. So thank you for what you're doing there.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, and I just want to follow up to that. This is not to vilify parents. If you're a parent that's listening, and your youth is struggling, and maybe you've not identified or looked at it in a way that you should or would like to, start now. I think that the thing that parents need to recognize is you are the parent. It is okay for you to question. It is okay for you to understand, to ask your youth things. And, I had a mom of 5 on our podcast recently who said, it took me a long time to realize I couldn't parent all of my kids the same way. They all wanted to share and open up in different ways at different times. And I think, just having that understanding about your unique situation with your kiddo or kiddos is really important, and recognize that you may have to take a pause and look differently. But the thing that I want to encourage any parent to really recognize and look at is if something feels off, it probably is. And that could be a really good gut check to say, hey, maybe I need to ask some more questions, or maybe I need to build in some extra time with my kid to better understand what's going on with them. What I have learned, Carey, kids want to talk.
Yeah.
They want to tell you what they're going through. And especially this generation, they'll talk about mental health in a way that others wouldn't. And many of them have found their identity in some sort of mental health struggle, which is unfortunate and alarming in itself. But there are some real opportunities to have some fruitful conversation by just asking questions.
Right. And this is where I want to land on this to wrap us up, because I think that's the biggest question parents are going to ask is, what questions should I be asking? And I really also want to encourage you, even if you don't have a youth that you believe is in trouble, because a lot of I have a friend here in Arizona whose son was straight A student, captain of the football team, from the outside, he looked like a happy, well-adjusted, on his way to success individual. And unfortunately he took his life, and it was just shocking. So I think one or two good questions, Jason, that we might be asking our kiddos right now, even if we feel like they're doing fine?
That's a great question. And I think it starts with one, maybe a validating statement. It appears to me that maybe you're not doing okay, or that you're struggling more, or I have noticed that. I think there's an element of recognizing when you walk into that conversation that you're validating that you see your kid, that you see that something's going on. So they understand that you're watching. And I think following that up with something that's appropriate, depending on how they respond. I want to give parents some grace here. There is no dictating need here to do this perfectly. It is okay to ask a question and it not come out right and clean it up after the fact. Like, that didn't come out how I wanted it to. Like, I wanted us to have a fruitful conversation about this. It did not come out that way. Forgive me. Let me try this again. Like, I think the humanness in this, you might ask how we ended up with the name Nobody's Perfect. And I can tell you is built on a previous podcast I did called Teen Talk. And what I can tell you is overwhelmingly the thread that pulled through every conversation, and the same with this podcast, is this desire we have as humans. And I don't think it's a kid thing. I think it's a human thing to be perfect.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, as a parent, if you can just show up and give yourself some grace and recognition that you don't have to do this perfectly, I think it really takes the valve down a little bit, the temperature inside, to really just show up in an authentic way and just ask some thoughtful questions. And if you don't know what to ask, maybe ask yourself, what would be helpful if I was in this situation? What would help me if somebody asked me at that time? Start there.
Yeah. This is so good. I think the point we're making here is that we just have to communicate, and we have to stop worrying about, how's it going to come across? I think one of the best things my husband and I did when raising our kids was that we communicated a lot with them. And if we made a mistake, we owned it.
But isn't that all things in life? I mean, just giving yourself the grace to be human and be the ability to make mistakes. I mean, our tagline at Nobody's Perfect Community is perfection isn't real, your story is. And I want those words to filter through for people listening. Perfection isn't real. Right. Your story is. And I think based on what you just said, I mean, really it is foundationally built in telling stories. And, that starts with, the imperfection in how we do it. And the fact that you can have grace for yourself to do it again if you need to, and again and again. It's just it's important to really give ourselves that pass of just showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been such a rich conversation. We could be talking forever, but we'll be having you back for sure.
I would love to do that.
Would love to talk with you more about being a resource for my Vision is Victory Academy community, Jason. So we'll be talking more, no doubt. I appreciate everything you're doing and the time that you spent here with me today.
Carey, it was a pleasure. I'm happy to serve, and please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you in your success that I know is coming for you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we met.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, to listening to this episode. And hey, if you really enjoyed this conversation today and it really resonated with you and you want to learn more, I want to encourage you to stay tuned and listen to my message after this episode about my Vision is Victory Academy. You'll want to learn a little bit more about that if you want deeper dives into conversations like this. So hope you'll join us and share it out. And I'm here to remind you to keep looking up.
Design the life you've always dreamed of with Viva, Vision is Victory Academy. Join us and discover how to transform your vision into victory. Whether you're seeking clarity, resilience, or a path to personal growth, Viva is here to guide you every step of the way. Don't wait for life to happen to you. Make it happen with Viva. Sign up today at visionisvictoryacademy.com and take the first steps towards a life of purpose and passion. Your future self will thank you.